Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday night Bible class, and all those of you joining us out there. And we figured that Rudy might be out there instead of being here, and I hope you're getting better, Rudy. And Esther's improving, Hermie's improving. The fact is, Esther is really improving, and we're all excited about that. And anyway, I'm not sure who all's out there, but whoever's there, we welcome you. Who?
Terry.
Terry? Okay. Glad to have you, Terry. I haven't seen you in a long time. And anyway, just a reminder to everybody that we're having that walk through the Bible on Saturday, 10 o'clock, from 10 to 2, with a 1 hour break for lunch. And it's free to all, so I invite you to come and join in with us. Well, if you want to buy some books or something, you have to pay for those. We don't do that for you.
But you get.
Ishmael says he's also on.
Okay, good. Ishmael's on also.
Oh, good evening, Ishmael. Glad to have you. And but anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We're in chapter 16. Now, if you remember in chapter 15 that Absalom came into Jerusalem and David went out. And you know, we read that and we wonder, David, what's wrong with you? You know, you're the great military king of Israel. Why are you? Oh, can you cut? Maybe you can close those vents.
You want the fan
Oh,
on?
I got you.
No, I don't.
I got it. I can stand up on the chair.
What is this trying to do?
Can you reach
Can't
it?
even reach. Hold on. Oh, my stomach.
Yeah, you're not quite tall enough. Well, maybe she is.
If I wait,
No,
hold
no,
on. Don't mind what. Wait, how do I close it?
It should. They should close over. Well, push the little windows.
No, that's okay. It doesn't work.
They don't move.
No, it doesn't happen.
Te vas a brincar.
No, those are not. It's the ones inside, but
Been too long since they've been used.
I guess so.
Anyway, well,
Madre, ¿tú sabes qué
I'll
está en la
remember
chamba?
my blanket one of these days.
well, y'all can come here and sit with me.
Sí, no. Ahorita no. Mira, voy a poner el diablo.
I'm fine. I just didn't want to.
I'll be right back.
Anyway, we wonder, why did David, the great military leader, why did he let his son chase him out of Jerusalem? But you know, evident it was God's will. Some say that David did it because he didn't want to see Jerusalem being destroyed because of a war going on in there. And well, then that David, David he didn't want to go against his son. And that's only natural, even if your son's wrong, you don't really want to do battle with him. And I think about that boy that killed Charlie Kirk. His dad took him to the sheriff, talked him into turning himself in. His dad and their pastor, who I guess was a Mormon, and they talked him into turning himself in. And pretty good idea. They figured he was going to be executed, but they convinced him that he should face up to what he had done wrong.
I think this is my
No
opinion.
hay
That
problema con
if he pleads guilty and there's no court, then they might spare him.
Well, but if me, I would just as soon be executed as spend my life in prison. And on death row all by yourself. Anyway. Okay, chapter 16 is going to move us into a little conflict between. Well, this is that when Absalom came in and all the terrible things that he did when he came into Jerusalem, and David's going to be out running, and we're going to see who comes out to help David, and we're going to see what Absalom is doing back in Jerusalem. Okay, let's start with verse 1 of chapter 16. And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread and 100 bunches of raisins and 100 of summer fruits and a bottle of wine. So, well, good for this guy. He came and he brought lunch. Come on in here.
Hi.
Y'all just in time.
They just threw those tree limbs down on those new plants.
I know, I was
My
telling
mom
you.
was so mad.
We're all mad.
That's upsetting.
It is.
Oh, hi. What are you doing hiding there?
She's the Unabomber.
She's cold.
She's modern. She's wearing a hoodie.
She's wearing a hoodie.
She's the Unabomber. Yeah, I am. But sniper, we're killing
Uh-oh.
Okay, we're in chapter 16.
David.
And
I'm talking to you, babe.
Blu-ray from where?
Here's the number one.
Blu-ray.
and David is having a conversation with Ziba, Mephibosheth. Remember, Mephibosheth was the crippled boy, son of Jonathan, that David took under his arm, and he ate all his meals at David's table. So David really went out of his way for this boy. And so when Ziba shows up, verse 2, and the king said unto Ziba, what meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, the asses be for the king's household to ride on, the bread and summer fruits for the young men to eat, and the wine for such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. And the king said, and where is thy master's son? And Ziba said unto the king, behold, he abideth at Jerusalem, for he said, today shall the house of Israel restore me the kingdom of my father. Now, we read this, and then we need to read the other part of it, which will be over in chapter 19, I guess, when David comes back into Jerusalem, and he talks to Mephibosheth. And Mephibosheth has a totally different story. Mephibosheth's going to say, my servant deceived me. And so it would look, and I'm going to take Mephibosheth's side on this, and maybe I'm wrong.
I did too when I read it.
Yeah. But anyway, because it looks like Ziba saw an opportunity to prosper himself. And so when he says, well, Mephibosheth is switched on you, and he's looking for Israel to restore the kingdom back to his family, and David in anger gives everything to Ziba, which is what Ziba wanted. He wanted all the property, and he wanted to be the big man on the totem pole. What was the first sin after creation?
Right.
I'm talking about before the Garden of Eden.
Right.
Well, Satan's sin was pride, and he desired to take God's throne. Okay, now Absalom desires to take God's throne, and Ziba desires to take Mephibosheth's place. And you know, it's we see a lot in our culture. People say, I want to be the CEO. And so they set about trying to do something to bring the CEO down so they can get promoted to it. And that's just not good. It's just not right. But unfortunately, it happens. And that's just the way it is with a world in which the people are more interested in themselves than they are in other people. What did the Bible say? We're to think more of others than we do of ourselves.
So Ziba was being a politician.
Yeah, you're right. He was being not only a politician, he's being those on the other side of the aisle. I wasn't going to say that. Somebody might hear me.
I wasn't that explicit.
Verse 4. Then said the king to Ziba, behold, thine are all that pertain unto Mephibosheth. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee, if I may find grace in thy sight, my Lord, O King. My Lord, O King. And so David gives everything to Ziba that belonged to Mephibosheth. And, you know, he was king. He had the right to do that. And he could say, I'm going to take your property and give it to somebody else. And, you know, a king is an absolute authority,
Yeah.
and he can do that and get away with it unless somebody starts a coup and throws him off the throne, which might be the case too if there's too much of that stuff. So anyway, that was the story of Mephibosheth and Ziba, and of course you need to see the other part of it when you see Mephibosheth telling his side of the story. And I'm like Eddie. I believe I go with Mephibosheth on this, and see Ziba as looking as an opportunity to exalt himself. Okay, the next paragraph is about this guy that comes out to curse David. All right, and we see David being really laid back. You know, he was a guy that fought all these battles, and he fought his giants, and big hero of Israel. And all of a sudden, he's running from his son, and he's letting a guy sit there and curse him and say all nasty things about him. And you say, is this King David? You know, it seems to be out of character with him anyway. Okay, verse 5. And when King David came to Bahurim, behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul. Well, the house of Saul is really jumping on board now that Absalom is moved in, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed still as he came. And he cast stones at David and at all the servants of the King David, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. Now, you know, you don't curse the president. You don't throw rocks at him, because if you do, the Secret Service are going to take you down. And, you know, out of respect of the office, even if we don't respect the president, we still don't want to curse the president. And I know it's tempting sometimes to say, oh man, I wish this guy would have a heart attack and die or something like that. And we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't do that. And that's only God's decision for that. So
I don't think it's out of David's character though, because of the way he was with Saul.
Well, you're right. That part of his character is coming back in his old age.
David had his reasons for doing what he did.
Yeah.
And like the verse, was it the psalm that I read, or I forgot which verse I read? That he said, yeah, it was a psalm that he says that he counts God's enemies as his enemies. He gets upset when somebody goes against God, but like when they insult him, he doesn't really respond.
Well, you know, and David partially felt like he deserved this because of some of his bad sins. And so he felt like, you know, what God is doing is just. And it's just that God has kicked me out of Jerusalem by my own son. It's just that this guy is cursing me. But you know what's amazing? Now, David's mighty men are there. You know, those 30 mighty men, unless Uriah's not with us anymore. But the 30 mighty men are there. And these guys they're no pushover. This is your Green Berets or your Navy SEALs or that bunch. This is the cream of the crop. The cream of the crop, all right? And but David keeps them reined in. He doesn't let them go after this guy. Okay, and thus said Shimei when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial, which is you son of the devil. Okay, and he calls him a bloody man, and he calls him the son of the devil. Now, David never went after Saul, so this guy of the house of Saul, he couldn't claim David for ever coming after the family of Saul because he didn't. David went out of his way to show kindness to the house of Saul. Okay, verse 8. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul. And I don't know that David shed any blood in the house of Saul. But this guy's accusing him of it. And it's just like, you know, they're accusing President Trump of a lot of things he absolutely is not guilty of. And they're accusing some other people in his administration of things that they're not guilty of. And the problem is the silly press goes ahead and prints it. And when people read it in the newspaper, they think it's true.
What about when he turned over those relatives of Saul to that group?
Well, maybe that would be the exception, because those were Saul's grandchildren. Well, let's see. Actually, some of them were children. Some of them were sons of one of his concubines. What was her name? Rizpah. And so those would have been actually his sons. And he did that, and maybe that's what this guy has in mind here. Maybe he was one of those sons that managed to survive. Good point. Okay, verse 9. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah. Remember, Zeruiah is David's aunt. So Abishai would be his cousin. Unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my lord the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take off his head. And that's just, let me deal with him. I'll just remove his head from his shoulders, and there'll be no more problem. He can't talk after that. He can't curse after that. And the king said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord hath said unto him, curse David. Who shall then say, wherefore hast thou done so? So David is kind of implying, well, God told this guy to curse me. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what David said. That's how he perceived it. Because I guess David felt like this was his recompense for some of the bad things that he had done in his life, like killing of Uriah and the adultery with Bathsheba. And there was a few other times that he just chopped people all to pieces. And so I guess he thought he had his coming to him. And David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my son, which came forth of my own bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may this Benjaminite do it? Let him alone. Let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will require of me good for his cursing this day. And so David is accepting the bad mouthing from. I kind of think we covered this last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
That's all right. We look at it some more.
That was the point where we stopped.
And as David and his men went on by the way, Shimei went along on the hillside over against him and cursed as he went and threw stones at him and cast dust. Now, obviously, God told this guy to do this. Anybody in his right mind would not go out there against David's 30 mighty men, and throw rocks at him. I mean, would you go up and stand there while Trump's got his Secret Service around him and throw rocks at him and call him bad names? I don't think so.
If I was trying to commit suicide,
that would be instant suicide, right? And the king and all the people that were with him came weary and refreshed themselves there. And so you got to remember, David's not a young fella anymore. And so he's getting pretty tired, and so are the people with him. And evidently they stopped here and had a little supper or something and refreshed themselves, because Ziba brought plenty of food. And so you have to give him credit for doing that. And verse 15, and Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with them. And it came to pass when Hushai, the Archite, David's friend, was come unto Absalom, that Hushai said unto Absalom, God save the king, God save the king. And Absalom said to Hushai, is this thy kindness to thy friend? Why wentest thou not with thy friend? Now, so Absalom would have known this Hushai quite well and realized that he was one of David's closest counselors. You know, anybody that's in high political position realizes the importance of counselors. Fact is, in Proverbs it says that in the multitude of counselors there is great safety. And now, not all the people are that smart. I don't think Hitler took much counsel from. He had his generals and stuff. I don't think he took much counsel from them. They tried to talk him into ending the war a long time before it ended, and they came to him and pleaded with him. You know, we are bedraggled, we're beaten, we're spread so thin, and the Russians were beating them on the Russian front, and the English and the Americans were running them out of Europe, and he still wouldn't give up. And his generals came to him, pleaded with him to come to terms of peace. He wouldn't do it. And so,
Suicide mission.
so well, it's just that he wasn't accepting good counsel.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes when they're not out there in the middle of a war, they don't realize how bad it is.
That's correct. And you know, he's sitting in this nice, safe place there in Berlin, and while these other guys are out there getting shot at. And you know, I thought about that when, you know, when the Vietnam War was going really, really bad, which is the last of the 60s. Johnson was president, and he's sitting up there in the White House, and he's trying to run the show. He's running the show over in Vietnam, and he's not being shot at. But them guys over in Vietnam are being shot all to pieces. I can't say too much for them because I happen to know that there was a lot of. Our military was a shame during that period of time. The North Vietnamese found out real quick, if we sneak some drugs down there, them guys are going to take them. And a lot of those guys in our military were so high on drugs they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag. And they were sending women down there to entice them. And my brother-in-law he told me, he says, they had those North Vietnamese women hanging around the camp all the time trying to entice people. And he says, and most of them were terribly infected. And that was to bring down the morale of the military. And it was working. And with the drugs and all that was going on. And so I've faulted President Johnson because he didn't let the military run it. If he let the military run it, I think it would have been a whole lot better. But Johnson and his friends were in Washington were running that war. And they told them where they could bomb and where they couldn't bomb and what, you know, and it was terrible. And I'm glad I wasn't part of it. Okay, where are we at?
17.
Oh, verse 18. And Hushai said unto Absalom, nay, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be, and with him will I abide. And so he says, hey, you're the choice of Israel now. So my loyalty is to you. Now, of course, that, you know, you got to remember that old Absalom has got his head pretty full of himself. And, you know, that's what a guy that's got his head full of himself likes to hear. Yeah. And, oh, yeah, you're right, man. You're right. Israel is setting me up, and you owe your loyalty to me because now I'm the big man on the totem pole. And so Absalom just ate it up, and he didn't realize that Hushai was playing him for a fool. I don't know whether I'm pronouncing his name right or not, but it sounds good to me.
All right.
Hushai.
We don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like those terrorists over there.
I would
Oh, those are the Hussies.
Hushai, but I don't know either.
Verse 20. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go in unto thy father's concubines, which he hath left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all of them that are with thee be strong. And now this was the last step in separating David from his son. And the Bible forbids a man and a woman, a man and his son sharing the same woman.
Yeah.
And it just makes common sense. But anyway, this was a counsel of this guy he gave to Absalom, and Absalom took it. And it just really, if there was anything left between him and David, that would have finished it. David still pleaded for them to spare his son's life, but I don't think David could have ever looked his son in the eyes again after what he did with his. Well, David shouldn't have had those concubines to start with. we could start right there, right?
This is despicable.
Yes, it's despicable.
Yeah.
Okay,
23.
verse 22. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. And the counsel about Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. And so everybody said, oh, man, remember who said the voice of God, not a man? The people that were listening, Herod
Oh, yeah.
Herod Antipas. Which one was it? It would be Herod the Great's grandson in Acts chapter 12. And he gave this speech, and people, the voice of a God and not of a man. Boom. God struck him and the worms ate him.
And they say that the God of the New Testament doesn't do it.
Do what now?
And they say that God of the New Testament is not the same as the Old
Well,
Testament.
there's some rough stuff. There's some rough stuff in the New Testament too, right?
But Nathan predicted this.
Do what now?
Nathan predicted this. The prophet Nathan.
Oh, yeah, about the sword in his house. Yeah, because factually, that's
Do you read
that's-
this?
that's-
The concubines.
my title in these chapters: a sword in David's house. And now the coup of Absalom, David flees Absalom, and so forth. But my titles for all these chapters is the sword in David's house, and this is the fulfillment of that prophecy. And look at what happened with his sons. Ammon raped Tamar. Absalom killed Ammon. Absalom took over the throne and chased David out. And then after Absalom, what was the fourth son's name?
The fourth son.
There you go. Anyway, all of David's sons, not all of them, but the first ones, the oldest ones, turned against him. Huh? Adonijah. And he also tried to take the throne. And they both did this while David was still alive.
Yeah.
Generally, when you take the throne is after the king is dead.
Well, that's
But-
why there's royal assassination.
Well, yeah, that's
So
that
they
that
hurry the process.
that was kind of a
He too would take-
kind of a spiritual assassination, I guess. And why should I wait to be king? Let's get rid of the old king and I can take over. And of course, they were accusing David of becoming weak, which really wasn't, but it had the appearances of that. Okay, we step over to chapter 17. We're moving right along here today. Verse 1, moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, let us now choose out 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue after David this night. And so this old counselor, now, here's another place where a politician is going to run a war. And this counselor, who's a politician, not a soldier, and he says, let me choose out 12,000 men, and I'll go take care of David. Well, all he was going to do is says, okay, y'all go out there and get him. And he was going to sit back there in the safety of his tent. And there are some officers that way, but most of the officers I knew did not operate that way. Most of the officers I knew when I was in the Marine Corps, it was come on, guys, let's go. Not go on, guys. But some officers, they're the go on type of officer, and they're not very popular at all because they want to stay back where it's safety instead of getting shot at. Verse 2, and I will come upon him while he is weary and weak handed, and will make him afraid, and all the people that are with him shall flee, and I will smite the king only. Now, did he really think those 30 mighty men were going to run? He didn't know those 30 mighty men very well. I mean, you know, a guy that grabs a lion down in a pit on a snowy day and beats him to death, and another guy that stands and fights a bunch of Egyptians in the middle of a wheat field or a barley field. And, you know, several of these mighty men killed multiple people by themselves. And, you know, and this guy thinks that I'm going to take 12,000 men over there and those mighty men are going to run from us. I don't think so. Those guys will stay and fight until they drop dead. And and Uriah was one of those. And unfortunately, David removed him from the picture. And anyway, it says, I will only smite the king. Now, Absalom was all for the king being killed. You know, to me, that's just really kind of bad when a person hastens along the death of his father. And, you know, we know our parents are going to die eventually, but we want to keep them as long as we can, don't we? That's usually the normal way. And maybe sometimes we keep them too long and put them through a lot of unpleasant years in their lives. We keep them alive with all kinds of artificial things. But anyway, I wanted to keep my parents around as long as I could. My dad died just before he was 86, and my mom just before she was 97. And so my parents, although I only had my dad 50 years, because he was 36 when I was born. I think he was 36 when I was born. So I only knew him for 50 years, but I learned a lot from him. And some of it wasn't very pleasant. Yeah, that was the Board of Education to the seat of knowledge. And I will bring back all the people unto thee, the men whom thou seekest, is as all return, and so all the people shall be in peace. But he says, I'll take my 12,000 men, I'll go out and I'll do in the king, and then I'll bring everybody back, and they'll all be on your side. Now, that sounds good, especially to a man who's full of himself. And he's so full of himself that he says, oh, yeah, let's do this. And so he's going to buy into this. But look at here. And then said Absalom, call now Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear likewise what he said. And so he said, well, you know, this guy was David's best counselor. Maybe I should hear what he has to say, because he has, quote, quote, sworn allegiance to me. And so Absalom says, let's hear what he has to say. And when Hushai was come to Absalom, Absalom spake unto him, saying, Ahithophel hath spoken after this manner. Shall we do after this saying? If not, speak thou. And Hushai said unto Absalom, the counsel that Ahithophel hath given is not good at this time. For, saith Hushai, thou knowest thy father and his men, that they be mighty men, and they be chafed in their minds, as a bear robbed of her whelps in the field, and thy father is a man of war, and will not lodge with the people. And in my personal notes, I wrote this, that Absalom is assuming that David is old and weak, but you take an old bear and you wound her, and boy, you've got a fight on your hands. And the same thing with a coyote. A coyote will not fight until you get him in a corner. And you get him into a corner, and you may have a pretty good fight out of him. And David was like that old bear. You wound him, and then he comes back and fights more vicious than he normally would.
How old was he at this time?
Huh?
How old was David at this time?
Probably about 70.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That
that's
was
70
old.
back that time was not.
Now, 70 was very old back then.
I know, but people seem to be still stronger and live better.
Well, yes. Now earlier, like Moses went to 120. Joshua went to 110, as did Joseph. So it was nothing unusual. But by the time David came along, it says in the Psalms, we had 60 and 70 years, which is 70. It's appointed a man to have 70. And so that's about what David lived. Now he became king, we believe, when he was 30. And he reigned for 40 years. So this puts him right at 70 years old. And, you know,
But he had a rough, tough.
when I was 70, I was not willing to go to war.
Saul reigned for 40 years. David reigned for 40 years. Solomon reigned for 40
Yes. And that's pretty interesting how those first three kings all had 40 years apiece. And but anyway, at 70 years old, I'm not willing to go out and fight.
You weren't going to leave the field at 70.
Well, yeah. But you know, it's
I'm not willing to go fight now.
yeah, well, I understand that too. Yeah. Usually after 40. Are you 40 yet, Eddie?
49.
49. Okay, well,
You're still up.
you know the
40.
well, you know, even the Marine Corps recognizes that 40 years old, you don't have to meet all the requirements that they require of people 39 and down. And you don't have to run that 3 miles with your pack and rifle and all that kind of stuff and all those other things you got to do. So they recognize old age sets in. And
Did you hear Hegseth's speech, how he said that we need to be, our army needs to be in shape, even the generals, they need to be.
Yes.
boy, that was quite a speech, wasn't it? And did you see how many bald heads there were there? I looked at that and I said, honey, look at all them bald heads. Well, let's face it, those guys were mainly generals. And not all of them were American, I don't think. Some of them, I think, were foreigners. But, you know, when a guy gets to be a general, he probably pretty well lost his hair. And I've still got maybe 10% of mine. But both of my brothers were totally bald long before I was well, they were bald when they were 50 years old.
Oh,
And
dale,
well, Scott started getting bald at 25. And so, you know, it's just some people don't have hair.
well, thank God you have hair.
I still got some, not a whole lot.
I can't imagine you without hair.
Well, if you
Well,
knew you would.
Hang around a couple more years and you might.
Oh.
You might not have to imagine it.
You'll be
I put a wig.
Yeah.
Uh,
Put a wig.
okay, where are we? Let's see.
9.
Verse 9. Behold, he is hid now in some pit or in some other place, and it will come to pass when some of them be overthrown at the first, that whosoever heareth it will say, there is a slaughter among the people that follow Absalom. And he also that is valiant, whose heart is as the heart of a lion, shall surely melt. For all Israel knoweth that my father is a mighty man, and they which be with him are valiant men. And so pointing out that David is still, at the age of 70, is still a pretty tough old warrior to deal with. And even though when he's that old, and those generals with bald heads are all more into giving orders than they are into any fighting battles. And but there has to be people to make those decisions. And well, you look at Dwight Eisenhower, and now Dwight Eisenhower was there with the troops when they landed at Normandy. And the story is that Winston Churchill wanted to be there too. And Eisenhower says, do what you got to do, but don't let Churchill come over here. Because if they find out Churchill's here, everything will be focused on getting rid of him. And so they had to kidnap Churchill to keep him going in on D-Day. But Eisenhower was right there with the men when they went, and he was no spring chick at that time. That was in 1940, 45, in 1945. So he would have been probably close to 50 years old then. And but he was still, well, MacArthur was older than he was.
Okay.
MacArthur had already retired, and they brought him back in to defend the Philippines because he was living in the Philippines. And so they sent word to him and asked him if he would take over the defense of the Philippines. And he had already been retired, and he was probably 60 years old then. And but anyway, he took over and then he went ahead and went to Korea. And then that's when he got fired. Okay, verse 11. Therefore, now here's Hushai's counsel. Therefore, I counsel that all Israel be generally gathered unto thee from Dan even to Beersheba, as the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that thou go to battle in thine own person. And so he said, Absalom, don't you stay back here in Jerusalem. You need to be out there with the people fighting. And he was setting Absalom up to get killed. And because he felt like that was the best way to end this revolt, was to get rid of Absalom. And so that was his counsel. You know, you be sure and be there in your own person. And of course, the man that's full of himself says, yes, I should be there. So shall we come upon him in some place where he shall be found, and we will light upon him as the dew falleth on the ground, and of him and of all the men that are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. Now, the other guy says, I will only destroy David, and I'll bring all the people back to you. And Hushai's counsel is, we're going to destroy them all. Now, a man that's full of himself is going to take which counsel? He likes the idea of destroying them all. And get rid of all these people that were friends of David, because they are all potential enemies. And so let's get rid of all of them.
So you think
13. Moreover, if he be gotten into a city, then shall all Israel bring ropes to that city, and will draw it into the river until there be not one small stone found there. That all this sounds real good to Absalom. And Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel, for the Lord hath appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom. Now you notice it says here, who decided which counsel he was going to take? The Lord decided. What did David pray back in chapter 15, was it? And David prayed, Lord, confuse the counsel of Ahithophel. Make it bad counsel. And the Lord did just exactly that.
So you think Hushai was doing it on purpose?
Yeah. Yes, he was. But he was setting Absalom up for him and his army to be destroyed, because he knew what David's army was. He'd been David's counselor for quite some time, and so he knew what the people who were David could do, and they knew Joab. You got to remember, Joab's still in charge of the army, and Joab's a pretty tough old cookie, even though he fizzles out at the very end. But Joab is still running the show, and so Hushai knew that Absalom would not be able to stand up against these guys. Okay, turn the page. Verse 15. Then said Hushai unto Zadok and to Abiathar the priest, thus and thus did Ahithophel counsel Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus have I counseled. Now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, lodge not this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily pass over. That means pass over Jordan, I believe, lest the king be swallowed up and all the people that are with him. Now Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed by in Rogel, for they might not be seen to come into the city. And a wench went and told them, and they went and told King David. Now, I know your modern day Bibles don't call that lady a witch. Winch.
Here it says a female servant.
Yeah. And I went back and looked it up in the Greek, and that word can legally be translated winch, but it's also usually a young female servant or a bond servant. And but anyway, basically a slave. And so this lady that we're talking about, it doesn't mean she's an old witchy looking woman. It just means that she's a young kind of a slave type. And what's the matter? Is it cold?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We don't want to freeze anybody out. But it keeps people from going to sleep, right?
No, no.
She's hot back here.
Make up your mind.
Anyway, they called her a wench here. That basically that means she's a slave girl. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom, but they went both of them away quickly and came into a man's house in Bahurim, which had a well in his court, whither they went down. And so they came in verse 18 to this place, and somebody saw them and realized that they were going to take this counsel, this news about their plans back to David. And so they go out to get these guys so they can destroy them before they have a chance to get back and make a report to David. Now, so you see that David had himself quite a little spy ring going here. He had Hushai, and then he had the two priests, Abiathar and Zadok. He had the two priests' sons, we mentioned them there a while ago, and then we had some other people, all of these people on David's side, but they were still hanging around the Jerusalem area, and so they were going to sneak out information to David. You know, one of the greatest spy rings in the world is Israel. And that, what do they call it? The Mossad. They say those guys could tell you in and out of the week where the head of Iran is sleeping. That those guys know everything. And they've so successfully incorporated themselves into Iran's culture that Iran doesn't know who they are. And so they get this information back to Netanyahu, and they act on it. And they say, well, you know, tonight there's going to be a meeting, a bunch of those leaders in such and such a place. Take it out. And they hit that place, and boom, there goes 9 of their leaders.
What to do with the beepers?
Oh yeah, that was pretty cool too. Israel got a hold of a bunch of beepers they had ordered that were going to Hamas, and then they dynamite fix them where they explode. And so hello, who's here? Boom, and it blows their brains out. And a whole bunch of them died from answering their phones. Oh, that was a couple of years ago.
About a year ago.
Yeah.
Or less.
And but anyway, it was very effective. And how on earth Israel does these things, I know how. God really has His hand in it.
And they're very smart too.
Huh?
Yeah,
They're extremely smart.
Well, they're not smart enough to accept Jesus.
Oh, that's true.
Some of them are.
Well, a few of them have been, yes. And you know, if you ever listen to Amir, man, he's just fantastic to see how much knowledge that guy has of Christianity and of Israel. And he can take the Bible and show you right where it's all happening. And it's just really, really fantastic. And he's what, 50 years old? 49? Same age as Eddie.
Eddie.
Well, you can read it in Hebrew, right?
Yeah, he can read it in Hebrew too.
Yeah, he can read it in Hebrew or Greek or whatever.
We have confidence in you, David.
But maybe not Spanish.
Okay, so these guys come to this lady's house. Verse 19. And the woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth and spread ground corn thereon, and the thing was not known. You see, these two men came in and they went down inside of her well. She spread a cloth over the top of the well, and then she's preparing corn. So when the people come looking for these spies, then here she is working over the well, and those guys are down inside the well. And she said, "Oh, they went that way about 30 minutes ago, you know." And so she continues her work, and they don't stop to think maybe we should look down inside the
I wonder how
well.
deep that well was.
Huh?
I wonder how deep that well was.
Well, you know, we don't really know. A lot of these wells are not that deep, but they had to probably have some kind of a rope to go down there, or a ladder or something to go down there.
Can't
And
bring up the water.
and sometimes the well was so shallow, instead of drawing water, they would lean over and dip the water out, or go down a little ladder and get the water. And,
Some of them were dry, I imagine.
well, some of them were dry. I guess I remember lots of open wells when I was a kid, and the one at my grandmother's house, they had a wooden box built around it with a little roof over it, and then she would lower her stuff, her buttered stuff, down in the well to keep it cool, and it was hanging in a basket down there just above the top of the water, and that kept her buttered stuff cool because, well, she had a ice box, but it would only hold so much. And one of my boys climbed up on that well one time to look in and see what it looked like. Boy, did he get tanned when my dad caught him. And Dad worked him over. Just like he thought it was shot, I guess. And he learned not to climb up on that well no more. Well, if it fell in, what you going to do? Because that one, the water was probably about 40 foot down in that well of hers.
There was that little girl that fell down that well
Oh, yeah.
years and years ago.
Yeah, I
It was
remember
a
that.
Small well.
Yeah, it was a small well.
And
And she could hardly turn herself around.
yeah, but they rescued her.
And she sat down there and sang to herself and contented herself. And they managed to go in all the way down beside there and rescued her. She was there, what, 2 days or 3 days?
Yeah, something like
90s,
that.
right?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was
so they had to go in from another direction.
Yeah, they did. They came into the side because they was afraid that if they tried to go in where she was at, the dirt would fall in on top of her. And so they came into the side and went down.
Imagine her singing and get down. Yeah.
But you know, it's just amazing. They talked to her and encouraged her, and she sat there and sang to herself and entertained herself for 2 or 3 days. She was down there quite a while before they got her
How
out.
old was she?
Well, of course, now she's probably 45 years old.
8 years old.
She was in the news just recently.
She was 18.
What was her name?
18 months.
Jessica McClure.
Jessica.
A year old and something.
Huh?
Less than 2 years old, she was just saying.
It was back in the early 90s, right?
It was 87.
87? Okay.
A year.
You remember it real well.
A year.
No, I just looked it up.
Oh.
I do remember it, but I didn't know when.
She was a year old and 6 months.
Just a real young thing.
She was without food or water for 60 hours.
60 hours.
Wow. Poor thing.
Yeah, I was thinking it's almost 3 days.
Unfortunately, I could never do that.
Wow.
Well, she shouldn't have had any trouble with water. There should have been water down there, right?
But I don't think she fell.
It was a dry well.
She didn't fall all the way down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was pretty amazing.
Midland, Texas.
Let's see. Verse 20. And when the Absalom's servants came to the woman to the house, they said, "Where is Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" And the woman said unto them, "They be gone over the brook of water." And when they had sought and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem. And it came to pass after they were departed that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said unto David, "Arise, pass quickly over the water, for thus hath Ahithophel counseled against you." And it's passing over the water. It's talking about going across Jordan. Now, it tells us where it was. We'll find it here in a minute. And I got my little maps out and located it, so I would know where it's at. And then David arose and all the people that were with him, and they passed over Jordan by the morning light, and there lacked not one of them that was not gone over Jordan. And when Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his ass and arose and gat him home to his house, to his city, and put his household in order, and hanged himself and died. and was buried in the sepulchre of his father. You know, if a guy's going to kill himself, why bother to put your house in order?
Well, you love his family, maybe.
I guess so. I like to think that I have everything in order before I kick off, so Baxter won't have to try to get somebody else to do everything.
I hope so.
And I'll fix some lights for this week, and I'm going to get one hand up there,
Is it?
and so we were changing some fluorescent bulbs, and I was sitting there trying to stab those things with only one arm, and so finally she kind of helped me a little bit, and between the two of us, we managed to get those bulbs. We changed out 4 of those fluorescent bulbs, and then and another one of those little round lights like they put in over the fellowship hall. We had one of those go bad, and I put in a new one. And anyway, I'll try to keep things fixed up for a little bit. Verse 24. Then David came to, here it is, Mahanaim, and Absalom passed over Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. Okay, so this town is on the east side of Jordan River, about halfway between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee. So probably just a little bit north of Jerusalem, and of course east of the river. Do y'all know where in the Bible it says from the river to the sea? It's in there.
Yes, it's after the book of Moses. What was it called? Who was it that came after Moses?
Well, Joshua.
Joshua.
Well, I'm trying to think. Anyway, the promise from the river to the sea was made to Israel, not to Palestine.
Oh,
So these,
Palestine wasn't around.
huh?
Palestine wasn't around.
No, back in those days it was the Philistines. And but anyway, the promise of the river to the sea was made to Israel, and then from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And,
Yeah, I think they call it Greater Israel nowadays.
the what?
I think they call it Greater Israel.
Really?
Yeah, that's what.
Who calls it that?
I think Netanyahu repeated that a couple times because they might want to expand their borders. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
That's theirs anyway.
They shouldn't have given her that.
Verse 25. And Absalom made Amasa captain of the host instead of Joab, when Amasa was a man's son whose name was Ithra, an Israelite that went in to Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister to Zeruiah, Joab's mother. So, because Absalom didn't want Joab to be his general, because Joab was really loyal to David. And so there's no way Joab would want to. And you know what's interesting? Joab is the one that wanted to bring Absalom back. And he's the one that talked David into bringing him back. But as I read this, I get the impression not too long after Absalom came back, Joab is rethinking his position. He's thinking, you know what? Maybe this was not a good idea. He was seeing that Absalom was starting to exalt himself, starting to prepare himself to take over, and he's beginning to see that maybe Absalom wasn't the best man for the job after all. And you got to remember, Absalom had a Gentile mother. His mother was the daughter of the king of Geshur. And
M-A-A-C-A-H.
what's that?
M-A-A-C-A-H.
Oh, his mother? Okay. All right. Or excuse me. Yeah. Absalom's mother.
Maybe.
Maacah. So Israel and Absalom pitched in the land of Gilead. Now, Gilead is on the east side of Jordan also. That's the area which became the land of the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh in that area. And it came to pass when David was come to Mahanaim that Shobi, the son of Nahash of Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and Machir, the son of Amiel of Lodebar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite of Rogelim, brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat and barley and flour and parched corn and beans and lentils and parched pulse.
Then honey.
Pulse is vegetables, I think, right?
Yeah.
And honey and butter and sheep and cheese of kind for David and the people that were with him to eat, for they said, the people is hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. And that concludes, boy, I don't know how we could hit it any closer.
How deep was the Jordan River, but they kept crossing?
Well, when it wasn't flooding the Jordan River, you could walk across it, I think. But then when Israel went in under Joshua, it was flooded. And that's when the water just stopped and stood up in a big heap. But I think most of the time the Jordan River, I'm trying to remember, we saw the Jordan River. How big was it?
Where we saw it.
It was not very big.
No, it wasn't.
We saw it north of the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah. See it Dead Sea, north of the Dead Sea.
Huh?
Then we see it north of the Dead Sea.
Oh, we did see it north of the Dead Sea also, didn't we?
Yeah.
But we saw it again. We crossed over to get up north of Galilee,
Oh,
Sea of Galilee. And it was not much more than a big creek up there.
yeah.
And but you know the Jordan River is really a small river now because they're using so much water out of the Sea of Galilee that there's not much water making it down to the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
And so it's created quite a problem with they have a water shortage there. Well, that concludes that chapter. All we're ready for now is the battle and the demise of Absalom, and then David prepared to return back to Jerusalem, and all those people that spoke bad about him got to start trying to make amends. And we find this guy Shimei, the guy that cursed him, coming back to apologize, and but Ziba didn't, but Shimei did. He's going to apologize or trying to apologize and beg for his life. So, anyway,
I saw the Euphrates. It's not real big either.
what now?
The Euphrates,
The Euphrates is not big.
it's not real big.
Oh,
Maybe
I just always thought the Euphrates was a big river.
Well, it's been drying up.
Well, I guess so. But the Euphrates is the one that runs through the middle of Babylon, right?
Well, I mean, I saw it in Iraq.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, well,
But yes,
well, in Babylon and Iraq?
yes.
Oh, okay. And but you did go to Babylon too, didn't you, or not?
Well, there is no Babylon.
Oh, you're right. The curse of Babylon would not be rebuilt. But you know the story about the Euphrates River, it was a big river. And it ran under the wall through the city and out the other side. And so the wall was so big that they weren't worried about the enemy. And they were in there drinking, having a big party, and the handwriting came on the wall and warned them about the disaster. And while that was happening, the Medo-Persians had a whole bunch of slaves up there damming up the river. And they dammed up the river and then marched through the riverbed under the wall because the river went under the wall into the city. And they just marched under the wall and took the city and killed old.
If we take the Genesis, the Euphrates and the Tigris, then the Garden of Eden, if the rivers haven't moved,
Well, those gardens won't be the same.
yeah,
They mentioned those 4 rivers in Genesis, but after the flood, all of that would be different.
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Because floods change rivers.
Oh yeah.
There,
The Rio Grande would move all the time.
I was reading
Yeah.
a book that's based on a true story, and this happened in Maine. And this guy had a piece of property that had a lot of timber on it, and so he harvested the timber off of it and cleared the stumps up and prepared to start farming. A flood came, and the course of a creek changed, and cut off a big chunk of that property that he had just prepared for farming. Well, in Maine, your boundary lines are not like we do down here. Your boundary lines are natural, like creeks and rocks and so forth, mark your boundary lines. And so his neighbor came over and said, well, you know now that piece of property you just prepared is mine now because the boundary line has moved. And the guy said, well, would you at least let me grow one crop before I turn it over to you? The guy says, yeah, go ahead. He planted white oak trees. Takes 100 years to harvest them. So he had to pay the taxes all those years on it. So it doesn't pay to be too greedy. Anyway, Lord, we thank you so much for a good time tonight. And Lord, as we see poor old David running for his life and not really knowing how to handle things, and yet he's still a strong man, and he's still got some really, really fine soldiers. And then we see Absalom, a little bit arrogant, a little bit full of himself, trying to destroy his father so he could take over his throne. And we look at these things, Lord, and we marvel sometimes, Lord, at how you work in it. And as we see how you're planning to take Absalom out because he is a threat to his father for the rest of his life. And we thank you, Lord, for what we can see. We thank you, Lord, that your scripture tells us like it is, even when some of it's not very pretty. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Yes.